Hello, this is Josie, and I'm here talking with Kathy, who is a member of my Art Revenue Coaching membership. And I wanted to chat with Kathy because she runs ads to her art and has success at it. So I wanted to find out a little bit about exactly what she does. So, Kathy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Josie.
I would love to hear a little bit about your art before we get talking about ads.
Well, I am a watercolor artist, and for the last 5 years, my niche has been children's art, so nursery wall art. But I also do fine art, and I do watercolor portraits, pet portraits, and yeah, that is kind of what I wanted to learn more about in the art program.
Excellent. Well, we're so happy to have you.
Mhm.
When we were talking earlier, you were saying that you have a website and you sell from a website and you also
Mhm.
sell from Etsy.
I do.
And so that's really interesting that you operate with both.
Mhm.
And you
I do.
find that most of your sales come from Etsy, sounds like.
Yeah, because I've been on Etsy longer than I've had my own website. I've had my own website for 5 years, but I've been on Etsy for a lot longer. So, and because you have to drive your own traffic to your website, it's been a little bit easier to get more eyes on my art on Etsy.
Okay, cool. So what brought you to buying ads? How did you go about that?
Well, I started doing ads on Etsy, so it's
Oh,
very easy on Etsy. You don't have very much control with them. Basically, you say, here's my budget. These are the listings that I want to advertise, and then they do their thing. So you do get some information. You do get some stats back. You get to, once you let them go long enough, you can see which keywords people are finding your work for, stuff like that. So yeah, I started having really good luck with ads on Etsy. And so when I started my own website, I don't think I started Google Ads right away, but I think after a year or so, um, I just kind of dipped my feet into the water of Google Ads. And I had a very small budget, and I still have a pretty small budget on Google Ads. I think I started with $5 a day. And what I started doing is I mostly only advertise my best sellers. So I know what sells really well on Etsy. And also on Etsy, those are the ones that I focus on. So I sell a lot of trucks and tractors. Um, so I advertise them. And then that was logical for me to market those on Google. Then I knew my trucks and tractors were my best sellers on Etsy. So I figured out a way. There's things you can do in Google to code your listings so that you're not necessarily advertising your whole store. That's a little sophisticated, and thank God for YouTube and Google search, because I did find information that helped me figure that out. And so I do kind of have that streamlined. So then I did watch the videos to try to figure out how to make a Google ad. Now, what's really nice is that they just switched. Google Shopping Ads just changed to Google Performance Max. And actually, I should say, I have a Shopify store, so when you add the Google channel, they have formatted things. It's not as sophisticated. It's easier on us with Shopify stores to run Google Ads because they have a lot of things built into an algorithm. I didn't have to know a lot about how to run Google Ads. Now they've made it even easier. They've switched to Google Performance Max, I think at the beginning of July. And so they have they're always changing, and they have a lot of artificial intelligence in their algorithm. So they've made it really easy. I'm still just advertising my best sellers, but they've actually made it really, really easy to set the ads up. And I found a lovely man on YouTube that had a wonderful video on how to do it. So I just followed his video.
YouTube, man, there's so much good wisdom on
right.
YouTube. Sometimes you have to wade
Right.
through a lot of
Yeah.
like old stuff or like things that aren't relevant, but when
Right.
you find a winner on YouTube, it's
Yeah.
great. Great.
Yeah. So
Well,
I think
So let me ask you just a couple of questions. So you knew that ads worked, and you knew, I think this
Mhm.
is super key, you knew what your best sellers were. So you knew that, like, oh, people like these
Mhm.
tractors and they are lovely. I'll make sure to have some of your tractors on the screen. The tractors are really terrific, and I could see why they're great sellers. So you knew already, you'd already done your own testing. I think sometimes people want to run an ad to something that hasn't been tested, and I don't think that's the smartest way to do it, because you want to find out, like, that at least some people are interested in the thing that you're trying to run an ad to. So there's an audience out there. So figuring that out organically, or in the Etsy world, you figured it out in the Etsy world, you ran the Etsy ads,
Mhm.
you knew that was working. So you tested it before you spent your hard-earned money
Yeah.
towards, running ads to something that you really didn't know if it would, perform. So then how I'm looking at my notes here. I am not as familiar with Google ads. I do a lot of Facebook ads,
Oh,
but how did you set up your audience? Or do they have like a system for that, or how did you
yeah,
determine that?
they do. And um, yeah. So if you have a list of customers in your Shopify store, and I realize if you're just getting started, you don't know. And I still don't have like thousands of customers to give them a ton of information, but I have uploaded my customer list. You can do that on Facebook too. You probably know that, right? So it's really similar. I find that there's a lot of similarities between, you're not necessarily starting from scratch when you're doing ads on a new platform, but yeah, then they have a lot of new things, I think. Well, demographics. So then you can choose male or female. You can choose age ranges. So here's another thing too. And I've been on Pinterest for a really long time. And just recently I discovered that they can give you demographics too. And so I knew for sure the age range of my customer. I know for sure it's like 95% female. Maybe that's a little high. I know there's a few males who buy stuff from me, but mostly moms, right? So I decided for that, a new ad I just started, I went with like 25 to 34. That was like a really strong. So that gave me some information. If you're on Pinterest, um, and if you're not, it's always good to try, right? And then because you can get some free information from doing that too. So that's what I did. You can go in and um, they have updated so that you can put interests, and they even suggest some things. So that was really helpful. So yeah.
So what you're describing here is something that in the industry we call an avatar. And so your avatar is your customer, so the description of your customer. And of course, all these online ad programs, Facebook and Google and any of the social media services allow you to make ads.
Mhm.
And they will ask you these questions like, what's the age, what's the gender, where do they
Mhm.
live, what are their interests? And it gets very, very specific. And then of course, Google and Facebook know everything. So
Yeah.
they're able to do something else called a lookalike audience, which is
Mhm.
where they'll take your existing customer list, or in my case, I use my email list, and I'll give them my email list, and then I don't know, it's crazy, but they like aggregate it, and then they're able to find like matches in buying and demographics and interests and all the things, and then they can start like finding me a new audience, which is pretty cool. So it sounds like that's what Google was doing for you, and you were able to learn, oh, this is the demo that I'm targeting. And of course you knew that just based on you shipping the art and kind of understanding who you
Mhm.
were marketing to, but it made it even easier for you, it sounds like.
I think so. I think like right now I'm using that lookalike customer lookalike audience. And then for sure I put in like, what I knew, the age, the gender, some of the interests.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just seeing how that goes.
So then how did you know you were successful? How did you know it was working?
It was really interesting because when I was first starting out and I was only using $5 a day, and this was a couple of years ago, and there were, I would get sales, and then I wouldn't get sales, and I would turn the ads off. I know you're not really supposed to do that so much. They advise you don't, but I did spend some times where I was turning them on and off. And then I stopped, and I looked at a whole year. I had turned some off, and I looked at the year and I realized that I had been making money running them. I didn't think that I had really, but when I looked at the whole year overall, I also realized something, and I think this is true. It's probably true on Etsy too, but when I run Google Ads, I get organic sales. My organic sales increase too. But when I turn my Google Ads off, my organic sales go down.
Mm.
So I really think, and I don't know if it has to do with they're showing, you see an ad at the very top of the page, and then the website might come, the non-advertised, when you see those top websites that rank. I know that I am ranking for some of my terms, my best sellers. So I don't know if that is just helping that they see an ad and then my website pops up down below, or like pictures, but I know that when I keep the ads on, that it does help everything. Yeah.
I've experienced that too. Like I said, I haven't run Google ads, but I have been running Facebook ads on and off now for years. And I find that even if I'm, I'll be promoting, say, a course or something that I'm offering, but I'll find everything that it's like the rising tide, like everything kind of like gets better. I get more views, I get more followers,
Right.
like there's
Right.
this kind of like, and I hate to, be cynical, like pay to play, because of course I've had plenty of organic reach and growth, but that $5 a day.
I know.
Like,
yeah, it does something. I noticed the same thing. And
yeah.
I have not had success with the Facebook ads. And I think you have to pay more to play on Facebook. And I don't know that I ever really made a profit by doing ads. I was just giving money to Facebook. And so I thought, well, but I also think it depends on what you're advertising. I tend to think that if I advertise my original art or commissions, I tend to think that maybe that would be better on Facebook ad, or even trying to get leads, trying to get signups.
Yes.
I thought about that. Maybe that's something that you'll bring up in the email. I'm thinking that that's probably the customer intention is different coming to buy nursery art, because they're looking for something. They don't actually necessarily want to get email long-term. I don't have a lot of them that buy over, repeatedly, or if they do, they maybe do it right away within the first month. Okay. So yeah, the customer intent is different. So because you have Google Shopping, people go to Google to find, they don't necessarily know what they're looking for. If they're looking for your art, or, somebody who makes something abstract, or
yeah. So it sounds like what you're differentiating here is you have like event driven art. It's very particular for someone. It's a mom knowing she's going to have a boy and she's decorating her nursery, and she's like, I want tractors, like, so it's a very specific thing. It's a specific person that's looking for a specific thing for one moment. It's kind of like, I want a portrait of my wedding bouquet, like hopefully that only happens once in your life that you need to get that wedding bouquet painted, so it's a very specific thing, which is probably why it does very well on Google, because it's a specific search that people are asking for.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that I was just thinking about that, the differences, and that perhaps Facebook ads would work better for something more unique, right? And you can do that interruption marketing. You will get people. People don't want to be interrupted by my nursery art.
Right. If you're not searching for tractors, then you're just kind of like, oh, I don't, this doesn't apply to me, it's interesting. In the Facebook world, my findings have been that retargeting works really well, which might work in Google too, where you're looking at the people who have visited your website and maybe haven't made a purchase, or who have looked. I mean, you can get real specific in Facebook. Like, I can target the people who have watched a particular video. I can say, okay, these people watched this video and they watched 45 seconds of it. And so I want to send them this ad because then they're already familiar. They're like, oh, there's that Josie, and I watched that video from her, and she was talking about arc or something, you know, and then they will be excited to, you know, carry on with the journey, you know, with me as an artist or a provider of some, you know, some information. And I think that that's really interesting to think about, especially event driven, or like maybe event isn't quite the right word, but kind of like
I'm
art
going
that
for
is, what's that?
I'm going for a purchase conversion.
A purchase, yeah, a purchase conversion,
Right.
but it's a very specific, it's like a
It is.
memento of a
Yeah.
time of life, you know. It's like a very specific thing that people, you know, an example of that would be like pet portraits, which is a little bit more general, but somebody searching pet portraits, which, you know, like is a huge way to make money. If there's people out there that like to paint animals, doing pet portraits, people love their animals. And that would be something wonderful to run an ad towards, because then maybe it's like, ooh, I like her style and I sure like my puppy. So it's, you know, match made in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you able to look at things like clicks and ROAS, which is the return on ad spend and things like that? What is the analytics that Google can provide you?
Yes, I can. So when you're doing Google ads, you know, you have to have accounts in a couple different places. So you have a Google ad account. You have to have a Google merchant account, because all your products coming off your shop are a feed, and it feeds through Google merchant, and then that feeds it into your ads, and it gets very complicated, but we don't have to worry about that too much with the way Shopify and Google works. But you do have to have a Google merchant account. You have to have some other things, but Google ads will show me all of very similar the metrics that Facebook will. Yeah, I can see how many times they've shown clicks, conversions, cost per conversion, return on ad spend, how many conversions I've had, the conversion rate. Yeah, I can.
So then you can find out if it's working, is what you're saying, which is, I mean, which is important if we're running ads, you know, like as opposed to the old school way of a billboard where there's a lot of people driving by it, but it's hard to measure, like, is this actually doing anything, you know? And in the case of running internet ads, we can actually, you know, because of the big eye of the Google, the big brother, they're watching us. They know exactly what we do. So they're able to like convey that information back to us as advertisers, which is helpful, because then we start to know, like, what are the ads that convert, you know? Have you tested different kinds of ad creative?
Well, I guess you could say I'm doing that now. I'm not sure if they'll tell me that though. So when you're making a Google Performance Max, it's kind of like a plug and play kind of a thing. Okay. So you have areas and to put like headlines in, you know, so I can put buy construction trucks, then I can put kids wall art. And what happens is then they make the ads, but so you have these different areas to add like descriptions and different creatives, and then they mix them all up. And I have some examples to show you that I was able to find online when I Googled.
Yeah, I'll throw those on the screen. So
when you're making the ads, you can kind of see how they'll mix things up. So I try to use, you know, keywords, key phrases, things I think people will show up, that will help Google show that ad. And yeah. And then you add, your asset. So that's your asset. I'm sorry. And then you add your images, and then Google mixes them all up.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the neat thing about Performance Max ads is they're showing them across their shopping, and like they'll show up on YouTube. They'll show in, you know, the Google shopping. They'll show at the top of your search. They'll follow people around because they follow me around when I'm searching. I don't know why they're showing me my ads. So there is some retargeting built in there, I think. I haven't had to set up a retargeting campaign. I think they're pretty powerful. They're pretty powerful.
And they also want their advertisers to succeed, you know, so because they want you to keep spending money. So they actually want you to do well, because someone who's never seeing any return on ad spend is not likely to keep spending money, so that they actually help you. The algorithm helps you, which is
and so I guess when you said creative, so these are a little bit easier than Facebook ads, because I
yes.
have tried Facebook ads and I knew you did have to, come up with your creative, so yeah, these are a little bit easier for me, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's just been great talking to you. And I think that, the conversation about running ads on the internet is vast, and it does get astonishingly complicated. But the Performance Max thing is something I'm going to definitely check out, because it sounds like it's a little bit more straightforward than, I mean, Facebook, I do the Facebook ads, like I was saying, and it is not straightforward. Like, it is not at all. It's quite complex, and it takes a lot of YouTube videos to learn what in the world you're doing, but it does work, and they want it to work for you. So I think that presents interesting opportunities for small businesses and artists that are trying to move their art. So Kathy, thank you so much.
You're welcome
for chatting with me and us today. And everybody, check out Kathy's website. What is it? Little Splashes of Color. Is that right?
That's right.
littlesplasesofcolor.com. You can go check out the adorable tractor art. And then, of course, what's your Insta handle?
At Little Splashes of Color.
Little Splashes of Color on Insta, and you can see some of the fine artwork that she's making.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Kathy. Appreciate it.
It's been